Hey everyone, this is the warm-up on beetles. The prompt you were given is that in a hypothetical population of beetles, there's a wide variety of color. The graphs below illustrate 4 possible changes to the beetle population as a result of a change in the environment. So what we're looking at are 4 different graphs, and what we're going to do with these 4 graphs is explain what is happening in 2 of the graphs. In your explanation, predict a cause for the change. Now, in each of these graphs, you'll see that there's an original population represented by the dashed line, and then the solid line represents the population after this environmental change, which is a pollution event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what's happening in 3 of the graphs, because essentially these 2 are very, very similar. So here's what I would be looking for in a response. So with explain questions, remember you have to have 3 ideas or 3 concepts tied to your answer. So I'm going to start with graphs 1 and 4 because my explanation for them is going to be very similar. So in graphs 1 and 4, in both of these cases, what we're looking at is an example of directional selection. Now, when we explain this process of directional selection, what we're going to be talking about is whether or not natural selection is acting in favor of a trait. That would mean that it's good, or is it acting against a trait, which means the bad side. So in this case, what we're looking at is in directional selection, the average color had been somewhere in between dark and light coloration. But because of this pollution, now one of the traits, one of the colors, either light or dark, is now going to either be favored or it's going to be a disadvantage in this new environment. So in graph number 1, you can see that the average is now towards the light, whereas on graph number 4, the average is more towards the dark. So in your explanation, you would talk about what color has the advantage or what color has the disadvantage. And in your explanation, you would also talk about that, and this is one of the important things about evolution, is that whatever trait is giving an advantage to the organism, that trait needs to be able or needs to be passed on to the next generation. I'm going to put here favorable color passed on to next generation is one of the extremes. So one of the either light or dark. So that is for graph number 1 and number 4. The difference here is that on graph number 4, the favorable trait is the light one, and for graph number 4, the favorable trait is the dark one. Now let's take a look at graph number 2. On graph number 2, again, here was my original population right here in the middle with the highest number in the middle. And then you can see that after this pollution event, we have a large number of light-colored beetles, a large number of dark-colored beetles, and what used to be the intermediate is now the lowest in the population. So this kind of natural selection is what's called disruptive selection. And again, we're going to tie it into how the next generation is going to be or have more of those extreme phenotypes, the light and the dark, and there will be less of the intermediate. So favorable, dark, and light color are passed on to the next generation. And in this case, it's that middle intermediate is selected against. Now for graph number 3, what we see is that there was a very wide base here. So we had some light, some dark, and then the average was in the middle. The average, the middle color was the average. And in this case, the middle color is still the average, but we have less of the light and we have less of the dark. So what's happening in this case is that the middle phenotype, the intermediate between light and dark, that one has the advantage. And so that's the one that is successful and reproduces in the next generation. This is what's called stabilizing selection. And again, your favorable intermediate or medium color is the one that's successful. And so I'm going to put here that the extreme light and the extreme dark are selected against. And that's it. Thanks y'all so much for watching. Bye.